What about when the root cause is your parents? So this was in response to a meme I posted where I said, until you name the lie, you'll continue to believe it. And so I said that if you experience a lot of conflict in your relationships and even a high level of anxiety or depression in your daily life, it's really likely because your core beliefs paint this kind of distorted picture of reality, because your need for survival will always trump the upholding of your values. So when you're in an attachment-based relationship, and by that I mean typically it's the anxious-avoidant trap, or it's a relationship in which you may know that the dynamics have become unhealthy, or they haven't allowed you to really expand into your full circumference, yet you can't bring yourself to leave the relationship because you're terrified that you won't, there's no other person out there for you, love is scarce, this is the best you can do, things like that, then you're operating from it, you're connecting and attaching from a fear-based place because you believe on some level that your partner is essential to your survival. Okay. And so when you are in a relationship where you feel like this specific person is essential to your survival, even though you may want things in relationship and value those things in relationship, you will sacrifice those things because you think you can't have them because you need to survive. So it leads to constant compromising of your personal boundaries, including your physical, emotional, and behavioral boundaries. And if you want to learn more about that, I also have a playlist on my YouTube channel about personal boundaries and what they are. And so then you kind of start telling yourself lies. And maybe that seems cruel, but truly these lies are intended to protect you from harm. Okay, we might think of them as limiting beliefs, but really they protect you from putting yourself out there because you feel like you're at risk of getting rejected or abandoned. Okay, so here are some of the lies that we might tend to tell ourselves. I'm not worthy of love. Love is scarce. I fail at everything. I'll be hurt if I get too close to somebody. I'm powerless in this relationship. I'm unlovable. Nobody else could ever possibly love me. I don't belong and I will never fit in. Okay, these are the things that we tell ourselves. And sometimes when we don't name those fears and or limiting beliefs, we tend to just sort of act on them unconsciously. Okay, and so lies like these, they often really go unnoticed and really like below the radar. We're operating on them, but we're not aware that that is what we're operating under. And really, beliefs that go unnamed, they just are automatically accepted. And so you really have to go through a conscious effort of naming those things, because if you don't, you're going to continue to believe them and you're going to continue to operate almost compulsively from that place. Okay. And so the purpose of this post that I shared was that when you call out your lies, when you go through that conscious effort of sifting through your thoughts and why it is that you're doing the things that you do, that's a process of naming and claiming your truth. So you have to like name the lie in order to name the truth. And once you name the truth, then you're in a position to claim it. So we've been doing some work with this over the past couple of weeks when we're talking about fear and desire. If you're always aware of what you're afraid of, but you're never naming the desire, then you're always running away from fear and you're never running towards what you want. And part of that too is being able to extract the essence of what you want, because that goes back to attachment as well. That's like ego-based attachment. And ego-based attachment is often fueled by physical and biological attachment. So ego-based attachment is this idea that you can only have what you want through this specific way. And when you feel that, when you cling to the idea that the thing that you want has to come in a very specific package, that's when you throw up resistance to receiving the thing that you want from the universe. Okay. So for example, I'll give you an example of what I do in my own mindset practice. So I'll notice part of it is attending to your body, because your body is the radio dial for your inner being. And if you find that like over time, I'll just give you a personal example. A few weeks ago, I had been really feeling kind of down in the dumps and not wanting to get out of bed, not wanting to exercise, staying up super late. And all of this kind of started happening after I made a commitment that I wanted to start dating again. It's something that I go in and out of with. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And I'm usually someone who is very self-disciplined, who goes to the gym, who obviously absolutely believes that the body is the organizer of our experience and that I have to be in touch with my body to really be in command of my life and my manifesting power. And I just found myself being like, I just don't want to get out of bed. I'm so tired. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I don't want to cook. I don't want to do anything. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm feeling that way. I'm just going to lean into it. And I think that's a change for me. In the past, I would have started beating myself up. Like, you have to go to the gym. You have to go to bed on time. You have to cook these meals for yourself. Otherwise, you're not performing well and your whole life is going to fall to shit. But I was just like, no, like, this is how I'm feeling. So I'm going to lean into it. And I'm just like, all right, I don't want to get out of bed. I'm not going to get out of bed. I don't want to go to the gym. I'm not going to go to the gym. And just make it like this conscious choice that I'm making. And so I did that for about like 3 weeks, like leaned into it. And then I was laying in bed one morning and the sun is coming through the window. And it seemed like it was going to be a lovely day. And I just became very conscious of that I was sort of marinating in a bit of a fog. And I thought to myself, okay, we've done this for 3 weeks now. Now it's time to like, I want to know, like just like turned into my inner being. And I guess it's a form of meditation, but I was like, I want to know, like, what is this about? Like, what's this about? And a lot of ways that can help is if you start asking what if questions, right? So what is my resistance to getting out of bed and going to the gym and being more self-disciplined? What if I went to the gym? What would that mean? Like, what's the part of me that's resisting that? Well, it would mean that I would be back in my body and that I would feel more present in my body. What does it mean to feel more present in my body? Well, it means that when I'm present in my body, I'm more aware of my desires. And it's like, well, what does it mean that you're more aware of your desires? Well, when I'm more aware of my desires, I want to have sex and I want to go out and I want to dance more and I want to flirt with people and I want to wear cute things and what's the resistance around that? Well, because when I do all those things, then there's number one, a fear that the things that I desire won't get met. I won't find what I want, or I'll find a bit of what I want, and then I'll lose it, right? Or I will somehow be hurt, right? Oh, no. So this is not in response to a relationship. This is just me. This is just me falling into a mood with no identifiable trigger. It happens sometimes. And so I'm like leaning into it and I'm like, okay, so basically right now I'm operating from a fear-based place. I'm still depending upon my external conditions to determine my happiness. And all of this is really stemming from probably a young part of myself that really wants to go out and dance and flirt and date and be in my body and be in command of myself in that way again. And there's this layer of fear that's just sort of coated over it. And so once I became aware of that dynamic, I then had a choice, and that is to align myself with the fear or align myself with the part of me that is resisting the fear, like challenging that fear. And so I just made a choice, and it was funny because it was probably the day that would be the hardest to go to the gym, but I just was like, all right, I choose not to align myself with fear. And so I got up and I went to the gym. It was like snowing outside. And I also committed myself to signing up with a personal trainer. And it's like, if I really believe what I say, then I have to honor that. And so my point there is that sometimes you got to lean into the feeling. I do think that if I hadn't allowed myself, like given myself permission enough to lean into it for the amount of time that I did, then it would have been pushing against something that wasn't ready to be transformed, that like wasn't ready. It needed its own voice for a while because the fear thought it was keeping me safe. And I needed to feel safe for a period of time after making the decision to get back out there. I needed to feel safe for a while before I could then make the choice to say, I'm going to align myself with the belief that I will be safe no matter what, because I source those things ultimately from within. Okay. 3 weeks, thought I was the only person to do that in this world. Oh, yeah, no, I think that, you know, I we often think that there has to be some external trigger for the things that we feel. We often believe that we'll feel something, or we'll fall into a mood like the one I just described, and we'll be like, what in the external world is making this happen? And I think one of the most empowering things that I have come to realize and to operate from is that it doesn't always come from the outside. That sometimes it may be that, like, you may be doing well, you may be going along doing great, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it seems you have a funk like the one I just described. And I think it's because you reach this level of expansion is the best word for it. I don't want to say advancement, because that creates a hierarchy. It's not really what it is. That sounds linear. It's really more an expansion. It's almost like we have this, when you desire something and you imagine something and you respond to things, and you become increasingly clear on who it is and what you want. It's almost like the circumference of you becomes wider. And this is on an energetic level. And then it's like your ego mind, or your waking self, has to kind of catch up with the way, for as far as you, the larger part of you, has expanded. And that's part of letting go of what I mentioned before about the idea of the way things need to look in order for them to be in your life. So for example, like, I've used the red bike example to explain this before, and I'll just use it again. That idea that, like, let's say you want to lose 10 pounds before your high school reunion, and you want to get a shiny new red car, and you're sick of using public transit, right? And so you set a manifesting intention. If it is for my greatest good and the good of all, I would like to manifest a shiny new car and lose 10 pounds before my high school reunion. And so then, like, a week later, your cousin shows up and they have a shiny red bike, and they say, hey, I bought this for my nephew, doesn't fit him, lost the receipt, do you want it? And you're like, what am I going to do with a bike? But what if this is actually the answer to your prayers? What if you had that red car, and every day on your way to work, you'd be stuck in traffic now? You would be pulled over more often, because red cars are pulled over more often, paying more money because insurance rates for red cars cost more money. And now, because you're sitting in traffic, you're late to work in the morning instead of on time. And so now you're working twice as much to pay twice as much for something that is actually a detriment to the reason you wanted the car in the first place, which was to make your life easier and to feel like you had more time to yourself, when in fact it's actually taking away from the time for yourself. Additionally, it's emitting fumes, and it's not good for the environment, so it's not in service of all. And because you're not walking half a mile to, or a mile to, the public transit every day, you're also gaining weight sitting in this car. Now, what if the bike would get you to work on time, because there's no traffic in the bike lane, there's no fumes, so you're not polluting the earth, so it's in service of all, and you're actually losing weight because you're burning calories at 2-3 times the rate you normally do. And maybe now you're even getting to work on time, if not early, and your boss is so impressed with you that you get that promotion that you wanted. So, you made this intention. You thought that the thing that you wanted had to come in the form of a bike, and maybe, I don't know, like a diet pill, right? And then a bike shows up. And so unless you can see that this bike is actually the solution, the answer to the thing that you're trying to call in, to the essence of what you want, then you're going to miss it. You're going to miss it. And you're going to say, this law of attraction, manifestation, changing your mindset and beliefs stuff doesn't work. That's all a bunch of malarkey, mumbo jumbo. But it's because you're not allowing it in, because you are attached to the idea of what it should look like to you. You think it has to come in this way. And so you don't pay attention to everything else that is entering into your sphere, and you miss it. And then you have a lack of faith. So it's not something that comes so easily to people. You have to train yourself. It's a practice every day. You have to look at what you are thinking and perceiving, and you have to think about everything that is coming into your sphere, and you have to keep an open mind. And maybe the best way to express this is I wish I could tell you where I heard this. There was a priest who was talking to a famous writer. I can't remember who it was. And the writer was suicidal. He was terribly depressed, wanted to kill himself, go into a priest as sort of like a last-ditch effort to try to find a reason to live. And he's just pouring out to the priest all of these terrible reasons that life sucks, he wants to die, and all of that. And so the priest says, he's like, I don't believe in God and whatnot. And so the priest says, okay, well, why don't you try this? You've tried everything else, nothing's worked. Why don't you try this for 1 year? And if at the end of that year you still want to kill yourself, I won't stop you. And he says, for 1 year, why don't you observe everything in your life and assume that it is for your greatest good? Everything in your life. And assume that everything in your life is on purpose. And so if that's true, if you assume that that is true, then you have to rewrite the narrative around everything that comes into your life. And you are in charge of that narrative. This is actually, to my mind, less about having faith in something above yourself, and really, to my mind, it's really more of an existential thing. Because if you're an existentialist, you believe to some extent that you are in charge of your reality, of everything, that you are the ultimate authority. That brings us to Carl Jung's phases of consciousness. Oh, I'm going to make it, that's the next series. We're going to talk about Carl Jung's phases of consciousness. I love that. Okay. So he did. So for 1 year, he decided that he was going to rewrite all his narratives in that way. And he felt everything was on purpose. And at the end of that year, he was the happiest he had ever been, and believed in God. But because he was looking for it. And just because you're looking for it, it's like, if you look around the room and I ask you, tell me how many blue things you see. You look around the room and you tell me how many blue things you see. And then I ask you, now tell me how many brown things you saw. Well, I don't know. I was looking for the blue things. Does that mean the brown things don't exist? Does that mean there's nothing brown in your room? No. It just means that that's not what you're paying attention to. And so therefore, that's not what you're responding to. But what if the brown things are the things that are actually going to give you what you want? So when you're in a partnership and you're in a relationship and you're like, this blue thing is the only thing that's going to give me what I want, and I can't get this blue thing to give it to me. Well, it's because you're only paying attention to the blue things. The thing that you want might be a brown thing, but you've convinced yourself that the blue thing is the only thing that's going to allow you to survive in this world. Okay? You aren't recognizing the bike for what it is. And that's not something that someone can just rescue you from. It's not. No one's going to save you from that. You have to make a conscious effort to step into your power and authority and make the choice that I am going to create consciousness around my experiences, so that when that bike comes into my life, I am in a position to see it and to allow and receive the gifts of that, right?